right. So thank you for coming this morning so that we can talk a little bit about Southern Lights. The Southern Lights Conference has been going on for a few years now. It started out with another name, but was changed to Southern Lights in the relatively recent past. It is organized by Brian McLaren and Diana Butler Bass. Brian McLaren is a theologian, a pastor, the author of more than 20 books. He actually wrote the We Make the Road by Walking book that we are currently using this year in our Bible study and book discussion. So if you've never read any Brian McLaren, but you are participating in that book discussion / Bible study, then you are reading Brian McLaren right now. He and Diana Butler Bass, who started out as an academician and an historian, is also a theologian. She has written almost a dozen books, and both of them are very, very active on the speaker, preacher, progressive conference circuit. So many years ago, they befriended one another and then they started this conference together. And the idea was to invite people who are Christians into a space that allowed them to explore scripture and current events in tandem together through a progressive lens. So this last year, we took 15 people to head down to St. Simon Island, Georgia, which is where it is held every single year, in order to participate in this year's conference. As the conference has developed over the years, it has become more and more also a space where Brian and Diana have helped to launch the careers of young authors, theologians, speakers, writers across a breadth of progressive issues. So it's a really exciting place to see and hear what is going on in a younger venue, as well as being able to have the benefit of being with Brian and Diana for about 36 hours. Happens every year in January, in late January. And we, as I said, took about 15 people for this 36-hour adventure where you begin on a Friday afternoon and end at lunchtime on Sunday in this jam-packed, content-laden event. And I think I can tell you without reservation that every single person that went was edified, excited, impassioned, and would be delighted to go back again. So I hope that you will decide you would like to go next year as well. We thought we'd start today by showing you just a few clips. I'd like to thank Melinda Gaudioso for going back through all the speeches that we heard and choosing some clips so that we can hear just a little bit from a variety of different things that happened. And then I'm going to give some participants that went an opportunity to also talk about their experience. So with that, we are going to start with a video from Diana Butler Bass at pretty much the opening of the conference.
Share.
Yeah.
Click it, yeah.
Yeah, trying to click it.
And then you'll have the starter.
Guy now. And so I skeeted, that's what they call them over there, which I think is kind of silly, but that's what the name is. So I skeeted. So what have we decided to do? Surrender the entire government to Christian nationalists? That's a form of this culture of submission.
Just
Surrender. Okay, that's what they want. That's what we're going to give them. Just surrender. And then there's the full-on true believer submission. I'm not happy. I'm not happy about any of this, but I do think that it is important for us to see that we have lived in a century of these ruptures, with these cultures that develop out of it, that are cultures that are actually seeking to meet some basic human needs. A basic human need for safety and security, to feel like not everything is falling apart all around us. And we have clearly failed but nevertheless, this is where we are. So what I'm asking myself today with you, and want you to think along with me about, what is the alternative to the culture of submission? Because I started out with 1900, and I talked about a culture that was known as the WASP culture, a culture of white supremacy, a culture that we look back on now and we think, oh, I'm not so sure I'm entirely comfortable with that. But within that overall framework, there were different possibilities of how that might work out. And over the 40, 50, 60, 70 years of that cultural pattern in the United States, there were very bad moments, Jim Crow, and terrific moments when Roosevelt, for example, gets elected and decides to sort of reverse all of the discriminatory labor policies that have been in effect that hurt labor and lift up workers and create communities of safeties around businesses and other things like that, and give us nets of safety, Medicare, Social Security, all things that many people in this room right now are absolutely dependent upon. And so there were good things, there were bad things. The same thing with the culture of security. There were bad things. There were many good things that happened between 1945 and 2001. The 20 years between 2001 and 2021, there were really amazing things. Elected the first African-American president of the United States. I think that by and large, white Americans are much more attuned to issues, at least a lot of us, much more attuned to issues of racism and global concerns, environmental things. And all that happened really in the last 20 years. Good things, bad things, good things, bad things. So while, if it is true that we have entered into a period of time that is marked by the culture of submission, that is going to be shaped by this kind of neo-nationalist populism, we need to ask ourselves the question, what does the good look like? What does the good look like? And as I end, I think that the alternative to the culture of submission is not, I heard somebody say culture of resistance. I think that's where we tried to go when we first started sensing all of this developing. I think instead I'd like to call it a culture of connection. Is that the only way people submit when they feel isolated, alone, and like they're going to be hurt as individuals. That you're under threat, your family is under threat. There is something that is going to come directly at you. But if we're connected with one another, if we understand our connections with one another, that we will feel stronger and less threatened, and we will be less likely to submit and more likely to together be able to think of some positive alternative visions of both faith and democracy. I hope that this conversation that we're seeding these days will just be the very, very beginning of our imaginations growing toward that alternative possibility. Thank you.
There you go. Just sit,
All
stop
right.
share, stop share. at the
Stop
top.
share. Got it.
At the top. There you go.
All righty. Thank you so much.
Right.
So
Right, somebody's trying to get in.
Pat Gray's trying to get in. So yay, another one of us.
Yeah.
And as is Karen. Hi, Karen. Hi, Pat. So we just watched that little bit that was the beginning. Clearly, those of us that went were positively moved. You can see that by how much we want to be here to have this conversation today. Is there anything that any of you would like to say about this opening foray? Yeah.
I'll say because then I have to leave, so I'll say in a few minutes, but she mentioned it, and I think we all agree, one of the strong themes that came out of there was connection and community. And I know we've talked about that here too, just really, to me, that was a huge thing, was, you know, wherever you are, however you're feeling, yes, most of us are feeling very disheveled, et cetera, anxious these days. But anytime you're in that, I mean, what brings us strength is that community. And that's something I need reminder for, because I'm an introvert, I'm a loner, and I don't share very well with people. That for me to say, yeah, I mean, I need that community and that connect. That was a very powerful message the whole weekend for me. I mean, a lot of other things too, but that was definitely one of them that personally struck me, that I need to be better about that.
Yeah, and I would also lift up that our Worship, Music and Arts Committee has determined that that's really going to be the theme of our entire Lenten series this year, rather than spending our time sort of in the struggle of wilderness and the pain of walking to the cross with Jesus, which is what we usually focus on during the Lenten season. We determined that we're in enough wilderness and walking through the pain of heading toward the cross with Jesus just by existing in this current place and time, and that instead we want to focus on what it is to be a community of care, of support, of courage, of moving together in a positive direction, both inside and outside these walls. So anything else on that one?
Patricia's trying to.
That's gotta be, is anybody else having an issue with that? Cause it may be.
Yeah, Karen, can Karen hear us?
Can you hear us, Karen?
I wasn't able to hear the video, but I can hear you all just fine.
Well, we're gonna try the next video, which is the Jackie Lewis video. Let's do that now and assure that when we do it, that did you make sure that
Make sure.
I want to make sure that it has the sound
I
attached.
believe.
And
That sound, let me double check that one.
I would double check that, and I would also let you guys know that the sound was not good on the Diana Butler Bass one, but the sound is better on the Jackie Lewis one. So we were struggling to hear it in here, and it's turned up as loudly as it can go. So it's not us. We've checked every
Move
single
it all the way up.
setting.
I'll turn the mic up
Move it
too.
all the way up.
Well, that's the mic from us
Yeah.
out.
Oh,
The
oh,
other
oh.
mic you can see from them is at its
Where
highest.
did
Already
you
up.
see the share?
It's on when you share, when you click share,
Oh, it's on that one. Okay,
Yeah.
thanks. I couldn't remember where that was.
when you click share, it's share sound optimized for video
Oh, yeah,
sharing,
right
so
over
it's
there.
okay.
So it is there. Share.
That as the Church of Jesus Christ, changing the story on race in America is job number one. Job number one. We can't have racism in a church founded by an Afro-Asiatic Palestinian from Judea who was Jewish.
I love that
Can I
line.
just say that again? Afro-Asiatic because the Jews are Afro-Asiatic. Reading the genealogies, which are boring as hell, you see and hear the diversity of the people that led to the people that are the Abrahamic people, right? I mean, Egyptians in there, Coptics in there, black stuff's in there. The Jews are Afro-Asiatic ethnically. Therefore, Jesus is Afro-Asiatic ethnically. Virgilio Elizondo, who's a Catholic priest who wrote a book called The Future is Mestizo, said that God chose on purpose to come all the way down into creation in a mixed race body. I love that. In a mixed race body, so that all the people could claim belonging to this body. So all the people can't claim belonging to the body, but like lots of us can claim belonging to the body when we look at the way human beings became human. In where did we become human? Come on, Dante, say it with me. Africa. How many of you are African Americans now in the room? What? What? Raise your hand if you're human. You didn't come from London. That's not where it started. Have any of you been to Africa? Yeah. Did you get to go to that part of the continent where the museum is with the first Eve? It's like Namibia, kind of, or Zambia, you know, right in there. Like where when the South African desert was a wet plain, which it was, this is where the slithering organisms began to like grow some feet and then stood up on two so they could reach the higher leaves. I'm just trying to put a little science in there before I go straight to Genesis and the myth I'm gonna pull totally apart. This is where it happened. We became human in the South African wet plain. We became human. I like to imagine that we stopped slithering, we stood on our feet, and we reached up for the higher plants, and we came out of the cave, and we looked around the space and knew that if we were going to survive and thrive, we had to do it together. So there's this philosophy called Ubuntu. Do you know Ubuntu? All right, sophisticated people. I like you. For if you don't know, Ubuntu is this South African concept that comes from the Zulu language. I can't click, but it's Ubuntu, Ingubuntu, Ingubantu. I learned that for you. Ubuntu, Ingubuntu, Ingubantu, which means a human is a human through other humans. A human is only a human through other humans. You could be an ape without humans, you could be a snake without humans, but a human is a human through other humans. This is where we became human in South Africa, where all the different languages claim I am who I am because you are who you are. I can't be fully who I am until you're fully who you are. That's why I'm on the Nice White People Tour. I say yes to all the invitations because we are each other's people, no matter what. Amen?
See if they could hear that. Yeah. Did you guys hear that one?
It was better.
Okay. We're in a similar situation here, so I think it's just the caliber of the sound in those particular videos, because we've got it all turned up as much as we have. Would anybody like to share about Jackie Lewis's talk, that either that in clip in particular, or anything about hearing her that was particularly moving or helpful when you were at Southern Lights?
She was great. I mean, I think she was so inspirational, and she set the stage well. She provided context well. I mean, this whole presentation, this whole discussion about where we are all from, our common ancestry. I think that idea of this Ubuntu concept of I am because we are, you know, that we are connected and we are who we are because of who I am, because of who we are. And that's so true, but we forget that in this current world of they, us, and they, this separateness, which is antithesis to what she's talking about.
There is a story of Ubuntu as well. I first heard about it when I was at First Pres Germantown, of a group of children together, and I think it was a missionary who brought a big bowl of candy or something like that they all wanted, and it said, I'm gonna have you run a race, and whoever wins the race wins the candy. And so they ran the race. And then as they got to the end, they all slowed down so that they crossed the finish line together. So that all of them could have candy, because they said, and when the missionary said, why did you do that? Why did no one want to win
Yeah.
the candy? They said, because why would I want to have what my sisters and brothers can't have? What joy does it bring to me if they don't get to share the same joy? And I think it's not just the white supremacist culture, but it is this capitalist culture,
Yeah.
this culture that I am more important, and that me having more is more important than us having enough, is also part of the brokenness of our society currently. So the third one that we have is from Mihi Kim Court. She is a Presbyterian pastor, and she preached for us. So we're gonna watch a little bit of her sermon, the one, yes, the media player one.
This one?
No, the
No.
one below, that
I
one.
see, gotcha.
Uh-huh.
And
Well, that's not one.
that's all right, you can close that one. No, that's the same one, Brian.
Oh, I was on meeting there.
Go ahead, escape.
Yeah, I'll let you do it.
Yeah, you got it.
Yeah, you wanna escape from that,
Yes.
and then go to Mihi Kim Court over here.
I never. Just move that over. And I have the thing.
Yeah.
I have an icon at home from the Taizé community. When I visit,
I know, but I can't find the little thing.
I mean, I can move it over.
Oh, this.
Just, I have such a love.
There we go.
visited there for the first time several years ago. The Taizé community is this ecumenical monastery in southern France that welcomes young people from all over the world in a spirit of reconciliation. And the icon I have was commissioned by the brothers and inspired by the focus of their community that particular year, which was on the theme of the courage of mercy. It depicts the parable of the Good Samaritan in these 6 similar panels, circular, all around the image of Christ in the center. I sometimes stare at the icon on my shelf for a bit. I linger on the various panels. They go through the whole story. The 2 robbers' hands, and then the 2 religious leaders who are praying with eyes upward, standing above the man now lying on the ground. And the Samaritan picking up the man to place him on his donkey, the Samaritan carrying him into the hotel, and the Samaritan caring for the man's wounds. And then the final image, which is of the Samaritan and the now restored man, and a third, presumably the innkeeper, gathered around a table for a meal. It's that last panel that always catches my eye as it reminds me of another icon, the one of the Trinity. Both have 3 people sitting around a table, and there's a large bowl or chalice in the middle of the table. And it strikes me, looking at both of these, that there's a deliberate connection between the restoration of a human being to community and the very communal nature of the triune God. Mercy is not about power. It's about courageous hospitality. It's solidarity with the unexpected other. It is the excess of love. In this moment, we get a glimpse of the kingdom in that when we pursue mercy to its end, it will always result in the full restoration of every single human being to the wider human community. When we moved to Annapolis in 2020, we saw that the church had a wall that faced the street. They hung huge banners that people driving by could see and read. And I asked if we could get a Black Lives Matter one. It was shortly after the killing of George Floyd. It was in the middle of COVID, so people then, after we got this banner and we hung it up, people had plenty of time, both within the church and in the wider community, to call us and let us know how they felt seeing that sign. Both positive, but also negative. And I often had to explain, when Black Lives Matter emerged as a force and movement in the world, perhaps to use Diana's framing as a response to another moment of rupture, the extrajudicial killing that we were seeing regularly of Trayvon Martin, Eric Garner, Sandra Bland, Freddie Gray, Michael Brown, George Floyd, and so many others, too many others, and even prior, I understood it to be a deeply theological response. Black Lives Matter is a theology of the Trinity. It's about the liberation and restoration of Black lives in this world, yes. But it doesn't stop there, though, because what many critics still don't realize is that this means that when the most disenfranchised and the most marginalized and oppressed of our world, Native and Indigenous, Black and brown lives, are free, we all will be free. When Black lives thrive and flourish, we all will thrive and flourish. We all will be living as God intended, in right relationship with one another, and in a radical table fellowship rooted in the courageous mercy of Christ. Black Lives Matter means recognizing the reality that we have systems and institutions that have created the conditions in our society that permit these tragedies and more to occur on a regular basis. And we won't experience true healing and reconciliation until we create structures of life so that all are free and equal. Meanwhile, we're called to be a part of this work, and we have a choice. What kind of world will we work toward in the here and now? Who is my neighbor? This question isn't only about who we are a neighbor to and who is a neighbor to us. It's simply an invitation to consider the multiplicity of answers, some contradictory, some surprising and unexpected. These days, the question challenges me to think about what it means to live courageously in this world, every day with people I don't know or understand, but who are equally beloved of God. Who is my neighbor? It means a constant working out, a continuous process of waking up to the people around me and drawing near in the same way that God draws near to us. God draws near to us over and over in the most, again, unexpected ways, the least likely places and faces. Maybe in ditches or roads or freeways, maybe in hotels, maybe just down the street or right next door with a Trump sign.
Thanks, right. So just go up to the stop share. All righty. So any comments about that one, Karen?
So this is the meditation that stuck with me the most from all of the, and I thought all of them were wonderful. But it's stuck with me, and I've had lunch with two very close friends this week. And one of them is so angry about what's happening that she cannot say a kind word about anyone who might have voted differently than she did. And she's not willing to speak to them. I mean, she's just blocked those people out. And I thought to myself, I mean, I've been thinking about it ever since I heard her speak, that this whole business of living courageously, and it does take courage, you know, to love the people who don't think like you do. You know, to pray for the people, and I don't know where I read this, but it's helped me when I'm doing my prayer list to ask them to have a change of heart. You know, I'm not praying for them to continue the divisive nasty things that are happening, but I'm asking in prayer for them to reconsider what it means to treat people with mercy. Because I think that that's the thing that upsets me the most about what's happening today, is that people are being disregarded and discarded without any care. So this will stick with me for a long time.
Thank you so much, Karen. Even as we were listening at this now, I was thinking about the Ukrainian and Afghan refugees who are on the list to be deported now. And the lack of neighborly care in the midst of that. But she does end her talk with people who voted differently, people who have a Trump sign on the lawn. Other thoughts?
Was she the one who talked about 2 signs in her neighborhood? And I never saw one of these signs, but there was a swoop of Trump's hair. And the 2 people on the street, one said, just the swoop of, you knew who it was, and they said, no. And then down the street, there was the swoop of the hair and it said, yes.
They were next door to each other and they ended up facing each other.
And on Highland Avenue, that happened. Just as you cross Monroe, going on Highland toward East Avenue, there was a person who had 13 Trump signs in their yard. And then there was somebody who had a Kamala Harris sign, and the next person had love your neighbor. And I thought, wow.
Yeah,
There's 3.
there it is.
I've been thinking a lot also lately about loving Donald Trump. That Donald Trump is a beloved child of God,
That's
Hey.
tough.
isn't it?
It is a
Isn't
really
it?
hard one.
I mean, he is, in my opinion, greatly gone astray from his call by God to live out his belovedness in what he does.
And he was baptized a Presbyterian.
Yeah, he was. Actually, his cousin was in my congregation on Long Island.
Yeah.
So he went to Ivanka and Jared's wedding, he and his wife, and she was actually on the front page of the New York Times dancing with Donald when she was 23 and he was 18 in a photo. So I heard a lot of stories about him both before and after the
So
election.
how do we reconcile that? I mean, you're right, the natural tendency of probably everybody in this room is to be anti-Trump, anti-MAGA, all that represents. And yet we are called
To love our neighbor.
to love our neighbor and to reconcile differences and also how, and the reality is, Trump isn't gonna change. I mean, we might hope that he will, we can pray for it, but realistically, that's not likely to change. So how do we reconcile those differences? How do we be reaching out to our neighbor and trying to find common ground when it doesn't appear that there is any common ground on most of the issues that we care about? And that's what I keep struggling with, and I think probably most of us do in one form or another, because we do have to find ways of building bridges. But there also has to be an openness on both sides. I mean, we have to be open to that, but there also has to be an openness on the other side of that. And how do we build those bridges? How do we make those connections that Karen talked about? I mean, the connections, the reaching out, the relationships, all of that is critical, but there has to be a reciprocal, it has to be a two-way street. And we have to play our part in that, but there also has to be an openness on the other end. And I don't know, how do we do that?
Do you have something, Melinda?
Yeah, I agree with you. I see that, it's very important. But I guess in the way I've tried to settle it in my naive way or whatever is I just want my door to be open. I want, and it's up to, so at least it's not up to me. In as much as it is up to me, I have not closed the door to you. And it has been spectacular failures on occasion. But at least I can live with it somewhat. Constantly he needs revisiting. And I constantly need support and help. But I think about going up to people who think differently on an issue than I do. And that knee-jerk reaction of mine that says, you know, what, I don't even want to talk to them about it. But going up to them and saying, I'd like to hear, people that think Trump has some policies that they really, agree with and support. And my knee-jerk reaction is, really? And yet I have to learn how to say, oh, I'd be interested to hear what you have to say about it. And I don't want to be the one to close the door.
Yeah, you remind me of Beth Streever talking about always living with an open heart. But I also think that I'm not willing to give up the Christian values that I hold so dear. One of the conversations we had at the Urban League last week was about our Congressman Joe Morelli, who voted for the defense authorization bill. And in that bill, there were scooched in there some things that were anti-trans. And so while I understand his tendency to try to do bipartisan work, if that harms any of God's children, then I don't think he should be voting for it. That's my opinion as one of his constituents. And so even though I believe you're right, Melinda, I want to stay open to being able to be in conversation. I'm not open to harming any of God's children. Yeah.
Right, but I think, I agree, and I think, all we really have control of is, our thinking and our doing. And, to start with to start with a love for humanity and this desire for connection, that's where you start. Where it goes is where we make the choices, how we move forward, but we start from here. And this open heart, this sense of what we want, what we love, what we believe, because we can control that. And then we move forward into uncertainty. But that's the nature of life. That's what God calls us to do. I think this conference begins to prepare us for that walking forward.
Yeah, thank you, Rob.
I think that, oh, go ahead,
Nancy.
So I have a friend, I had a very close friend in high school. A guy who was, in my close circle of friends, who I've been at, some of our high school kids are all still in touch with each other through Facebook and stuff. And this guy is very much a Trump person, which I absolutely cannot believe it could be true, but it is true. And so I was sending him Heather Cox Richardson's articles on a regular basis and saying, and then he would, I don't know if he even read them, but at some point he cut off responding at all, and so we cut off. So we have a 60th high school reunion coming up this summer, and he will be there. He lives, I don't know, some other place in the country. And so yesterday was my birthday, and he sends me this lovely note saying, happy birthday, dear friend, and I hope your family's well, and this lovely note. And I just am beside myself about how I will respond, because I've had some pretty negative feelings about this guy and trying to change him, which I'm not having any luck with at all. And so it's just an example of somebody who I know and have loved, who I can't believe is drinking the Trump Kool-Aid and responding with all this lie stuff that I know is a lie, but somehow he's into it all. And so anyway, it's just an example of
But
trying to have
behind all that, he knows and loves you,
yes,
right?
right,
And you remember him fondly,
yes,
right? So behind all the what's ahead, what's out there, there's something more.
right.
And I think it's okay to look at that. And maybe what you say to him is, I remember you and I love you too, whatever your words are, whatever your words are. Because if you're talking to you're talking to this, you're not talking to his behavior
Yeah.
and his
Yeah.
thoughts.
So Karen and then Melinda.
And I think that in what you said and what you just said, that's where Mihi's word courageous comes in. It takes courage. It takes courage to listen to people that you don't agree with. And it takes courage not to respond in a negative way to that. And I think we're not used to thinking about courage in our, we think about that hero worship. But in fact, every day now takes some kind of courage to get through.
Thank you. Melinda.
And for me, I think that, sometimes I feel like I have to agree with a person in order to like them. And I have to learn how to move on from there. But what's important is for me to see an individual, whether I agree or not, and just acknowledge that they are as a loved child of God, the same as I am. And it doesn't have to be, there's a different, has to be accepting, respect. I mean, and that's what's missing, in my opinion, with what is being sown by the culture today. It is so negative, and it's feeding hate. It is not feeding acceptance or love.
Just to that point, one of the speakers, I don't remember which one it was, said, hate the vote, but love the voter, which is, I think, kind of a lot of what we're talking about here. And that's easier said than done, but that's kind of what we're trying to find a way to carry out,
So I'm gonna move us on. Oh, well, all right, Steve, one more.
One last comment, sorry. We have to recognize there's a fundamental difference in the faith between what we would consider to be Christianity and what the Christian nationalists consider to be Christianity.
Yeah.
And that becomes a very difficult issue to wrestle with when we both proclaim to be Christians and followers of Christ. And I think it's a very difficult one to reconcile, and it's difficult to have conversations about. Just my.
Thank you. I would agree. There was an article in the Times with a guy, I don't remember his name, but it was a few days ago, who was about how hard it is to be a Christian today. And I thought, oh, that's going to be about us. And no, it was a very conservative guy who was talking about how reviled he feels because he follows the scripture in being anti-gay and that we are not a moral society anymore, and that we are, and I would agree, we're not a moral society anymore. We are a society filled with hatred and vitriol and anger, and that is not what Christ taught. But it was the same thing, where here we are both proclaiming Christ as our guide in very different ways. So the last one is Ken Medema. Those in the room, with the exception of Jack, know that Ken is a musician. Ken is blind, and so he plays without having any music in front of him. And at the end of every single speech or sermon or discussion or talk, he would play a piece that he would create, improvise in the moment that would directly address what we had all just heard. And it was a miraculous thing because every single one would be different. It would have a different aspect to it. It would be different in its, perhaps in its style, and its content would always be directly revelatory to what we had just heard. And just added this extra layer of beauty and power to what we experienced. So here is one of Ken's offerings.
Did you ever ever see a culture go this way and that way? Did you ever see a culture go this way and that? First, we want to be safe. Then we want to be secure. Then we want to be surveilled. Well, now we want to submit. Someone's got it right. Way beyond my knowledge. Way beyond my pay grade. Never see a culture go this way, that way. Don't ask any questions. Don't ask any questions at all. It's all right. Just give it. Give up. Give out. If you happen to be one of the ones on the top, you'll be okay. We will give in. We will submit. It's gonna be good. It's gonna be great. It's gonna be the best that we've ever had. It's gonna be wonderful. That's what they say. That's what they say. That's what they say. That's what they say. Come Monday in Washington, things gonna be torn down. Things gonna be broken. And weavings be undone. So people of the Southern Light, here we are, facing the destruction of so much that we have known. Here we are, shall we build those bridges that she dreams about? Shall we make those bridges that we can't live without? The most unlikely folk will find their hands being held. The most unlikely structures we will come to weld. Nothing grand and glorious, no, let it be tiny and small. A little bridge here and there, a little weaving here and there, a little thread here and there, a little dream here and there. And when the wind blows, did you ever see a culture go this way and that way? And when the wind blows, we will bend, but we will not break. We will bend, but we will not break. 'Cause I am with you and you are with me. Together we build the bridges in between us, and then we will stand together.
Stop share.
Can you?
Okay. Thank you. So that was the one that he did in response to Diana Butler Bass's one that we heard the end of at the beginning of this time together. And I don't know about you, but as you can
Yeah.
see, it's
Oh.
just
Yeah.
hits you so powerfully, even when we didn't even hear the whole thing. So this is exactly what he does every single time. I just want to spend a couple of minutes telling you if you want to participate in it in January of 2026. Did you have something else you wanted? Oh, you're saying yes. Melinda's saying yes. So I'm speaking right now to Jack and to Rye, who I'm very grateful for your presence, but to anyone who also is watching this online. Last year we took 15. It would be amazing to take more. This year, just such an incredible experience. I know many, if not all of those who participated last year are excited about next year. So what is it about? Well, the cost is actually because we've taken such a large group, they've given us, I believe it's a 20% discount. So the cost of the event itself is less than $200. I want to say it was around $189 last year. Then there's the cost of room and board. All of your food is included for the time at the conference, and you can either get a single or a double room. So there's a different cost depending on that. About half of us flew together and rented a couple of cars eventually. And so we also paid for airfare and the cars together. About half of us went on their own. Either they were snowbirds or drove down and had that as part of a road trip type of thing. For those folk, for the people who get there on their own, it's around $500 in toto for room and board and registration fees. And for those of us who flew down, depending on whether or not we joined at the beginning or the end, it was around $750 to $800. That may go up a little for next year. I'm not sure. We can register very, very soon. So if I've got enough of you that are willing to go again, I can begin to ask for our registration discount ASAP. And then as we get closer in the fall, I would begin to make additional reservations, depending on how many people choose to sign up. Next year, once again, Diana and Brian will be doing their bit. Ken Medema will be back as well. They have begun to choose their speakers for next year. Every year they're different. Jamar Tisby is one of them. There is a rabbi who is going to be, I think, probably our worship leader, although they may be a speaker as well. I'm not sure. There are 3 people. You can go on Southern Lights. Look up Southern Lights 2026, Southern Lights Conference 2026, and you'll find out how far they are, but they're still in the process of planning it. I went the previous year as well with other speakers. It too was amazing. I trust Diana and Brian implicitly that they will come up with an amazing program. So if you're interested, let me know.
Do we know the theme, the broad theme?
We do know the theme. Do you remember what it is? It's,
Yeah, I wrote it down.
I knew I could count on Melinda.
I wrote it down. Question is it in this group of papers? The theme was, rummaging forth, no.
I know, we'll just sit here and quietly wait for you.
Yeah, I don't know where is it.
That's right. I assume we can go on the online.
Yes, it's in there.
And it is once again something that is about the intersection of faith and our current political landscape.
Reimagining faith from the margins.
Reimagining faith from the margins.
Okay.
Reimagining faith from the margins. So if that interests you, if any of this has interested you, please speak to me or to any of the people that you have seen or heard today, the Gaudiosos, the Adams, Karen Walker, the Pryors, Pat Gray, Ralph Carter, Beth Laidlaw, Mary Cowden. I'm trying to think of who else. Karen Abbott.
Streeter.
Who else?
Yeah, great.
Yes, I got her. Anyway, any of us, but particularly if you definitely want to go, let me know and I'll put you on the list. So thank you for spending this time with us and let's go get ready for worship.
Thank you, Rebecca.